I'll be speaking with Mr. Desmond Maji Kodumi. He is the founder of Lufasi Parks in Lagos. He's an environmentalist and he's such a very passionate one. Thank you so much for joining me, Desmond Maji Kodumi.
It's my pleasure. It really is. And I just love this technology. This is the weapon of warfare that is going to change the world. We're already
Okay.
doing it. We're already doing
Okay.
it. And we need to do it.
Okay, thank you so much. We would start by talking about your perception of the elections in the US. Many have called it a climate showdown because we know that the two candidates are really on the opposite direction when it comes to climate change and the environment. Could you analyze your perception of the elections and of the two candidates when it comes to elections, when it comes to climate change and environmental issues?
Yeah, it's the most important election, as far as I'm concerned, that has been held in America. And it affects the whole world. I mean, America affects the whole world anyway. But this election will determine whether or not the Homo sapien race has a fighting chance of overcoming the totally catastrophic consequences of her onslaught against the environment. For hundreds of years, but particularly over the last 100 years, we humans have been perpetrating what can only be classified as ecocide against nature. We have been perpetrating horrendous acts of overt terrorism against nature, which, incidentally happens to be our life support system. And this election brings it all to a head because the incumbent administration, for various reasons, has decided not to do what is absolutely necessary to prevent this rush to a catastrophic breakdown of the various ecosystems, the various life-supporting ecosystems. And one of the most overt moves, apart from many other things, but one of the most overt moves was the pulling out of the Paris Treaty, where all the nations of the world got together. Every nation of the world. It was one of the most broad treaties. Every world leader got together and they agreed in 2015 in Paris that we are going to reduce our carbon footprint. We're going to cut down this massive pollution of the atmosphere that is driving this climate change, which is approaching catastrophic proportions. And by 2016, all those nations had started ratifying the treaty, including our nation here, Nigeria, from where I speak, which, incidentally happens to be one of the nations that are already being badly affected by climate change. The United States of America at that time, led by Barack Obama, also ratified the treaty that, yes, United States, which, by the way, was globally and historically the largest contributor, although she's been overtaken now by China, the largest contributor of the greenhouse gases. The United States ratified it and agreed, we're going to cut down, we're going to do it. There was a lot of opposition because it looked as if the various industries, massive industries that were responsible for this awful pollution could have their profit margins affected. Their profits might decline. And in this day and age, anything that could have a detrimental effect on corporate profits is regarded very seriously. And anyway, time elapsed and the incumbent administration came in, and one of the first, one of the first declarations of the administration was that we're going to pull out of this climate change. We're going to pull out of this Paris thing. No, it ain't going to happen. We're not going to let it. The Paris Treaty, the COP20, the treaty is not good for America. It's not, and ironically, it was on the very day of the election that the final pullout occurs.
But I'll ask you
So
something. You actually mentioned something, and that's been the argument of President Donald Trump, that you said China has overtaken the US. And that's his argument. He's saying we shouldn't be paying more than China. Do you think that's not a valid argument?
It depends. It's an extremely superficial argument. So on the surface, and it does unfortunately appeal to superficial thinkers. So on the surface, it's like, hey, yeah, China is doing far, far worse than America. But if you look at the historic accumulation, the accumulation of America in terms of contributing to the greenhouse gases is far, far more than what China has done. And the reality is that the Chinese are now moving very, very rapidly. It's a terrible disservice to America because, America has tremendous capacity for ingenuity, for, all kinds of, progressive technical developments and so on. Hey, by the way, who put the first person on the moon? Wasn't it America? Yeah. So, and if the trajectory towards clean energy had not been distorted, America, by now would really be way ahead in terms of developing alternative energy systems. Just, photovoltaic systems alone would have been far more advanced if America had been encouraged over the years. And it was only recently because of the Obama administration and a little bit more awareness about the gravity of the situation that, research had been going on in that particular area of technological development. And still, it was minuscule. Yeah, so it's a very superficial argument to say, well, America, we're going to be spending far more. No. The cost, and this is why I'm saying that it's the most important election that the world has ever seen, actually. Yes, I'm serious. Because the cost, the cost of not doing it, the cost of not massively reducing the carbon footprint, and it's still going up despite all the promises, the cost will be far, far, far more than the comparatively minuscule losses that some industries might face. And if it's handled wisely, the losses could easily be recouped by developing alternative energy systems. It's unfortunate that the blinkers are on, and they're on mainly because of the fear of losing a little bit of profit. And that is understandable because it appears that now a lot of the socioeconomic systems have gone so far into that trajectory that, profit is worshipped, deifying the profit margin, that no matter what happens, we just make money. And if you put profits above people, you got problems.
For people on the planet. I'll quickly take a look at the comments here. We have COVID-19 is a hoax. Global warming is a hoax. Trump is going to be the president. That's from Bob John. The Authentic Lean, thanks for joining us. Pablo and Peter, not Peter, Pablo. And we have Jack, who joined us. And someone said animal agriculture needs to be controlled. I would ask you what you think right after going through the comments. And then Jack also said superficial thinking is another raging pandemic among Trump supporters. So could you quickly address the issue of animal agriculture that needs to be controlled.
Wow, I'm impressed with the comments. There's some deep thinkers tuning into this program. This is amazing. Yes, the animal issue again. It's a very difficult one because the particular social economic system, the capitalism system has been practiced, has actually brought a lot of benefits, far more benefits to more people than any of the other isms. Yes, capitalism has definitely brought more benefit. That competition and, trying to get the best product, and it's brought a lot of benefits. But unfortunately, because it had taken on a life of its own and became unbridled, and it wasn't tempered by what it needed to be tempered by. That is the fact that no, 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 no. Profit cannot be ahead of people. You can't sacrifice people for your profit because that is not sustainable, and that will reverse on itself, through the laws of action and reaction, the laws of karma, the laws of retribution, call it what you want. But if you start causing, doing bad, eventually bad comes back. That's fundamental. So the animal agriculture, the way it's going now, it's been so heavily driven again by profit that we must maximize, 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 no matter what it is, no matter what kind of stress we're going to be putting these animals through. We must get the maximum yield from them. Oh, by the way, that stress is encouraging the release of all sorts of toxic chemicals into the animals' metabolism, because when they're frightened and stressed, they're releasing, chemicals that are not particularly healthy. And oh, by the way, this maximizing profit. So we're now putting the animals in cages when we're talking particularly of the meat industry, jamming them into these cages, and then we're feeding them with soya, we're feeding them with maize, we're feeding them with all types
With
of
chemicals, all sorts of chemicals, yeah.
all sorts of chemicals. And the reason why we're doing that is we want to boost the yield. We want their flesh to fatten quickly, and we want to get more money out of them. But oh, by the way, in order to feed them with all those soya and so on, where are we going to grow this stuff? Well, there's loads of forest out there, isn't there? Well, there used to be loads of forest out there, and the ones that are still there, we're massively over exploiting them so that we can grow all these grains and things. And then the chemicals are necessary because the animals are prone to sickness, simply because we're not giving them what they were designed to eat. When it comes to the the cows, they're designed to eat grass,
Yes.
not soya beans. And if we would just, allow them to graze and eat what they're designed to eat, they wouldn't need all the chemicals. Oh, but then the argument is that, oh, we won't be able to, supply enough because the demand for the meat has
High.
gone so high. Well, then we gotta reduce the demand for the meat. We can
And it's
survive
also,
without them.
and it has a ripple effect on also humans who eat them. There are more diseases these days. People are getting more sick because of eating these animals that
Exactly.
are grown the way they are.
Yeah, exactly. And they're pumping antibiotics into the animals, and then and then these things are coming into us. So we are now, getting resistant to them, and so it's a wrong turn. It's a wrong turn, and
So so
the
so, so,
reality.
so
Yeah,
you have so much to say, but we have to, I have to always try to hold in and say, okay, let's go back to the US elections now. Quickly, President-elect Joe Biden has said he would hold oil and gas executives accountable for harming the planet. He says he will go after them to eliminate subsidies for oil and gas. And what are your thoughts? Do you think these are just, this is part of election talks or campaigning talks? Would he really do this? Is it possible? These guys are really very powerful.
Yeah. Well, in Nigeria here, we don't call it politics. We call it politricks. And the people who practice it, we often refer to them as politricans. Politricans. They do like to make a lot of tricks and all kinds of strange promises and so on. It's going to be very, very difficult for him to to do anything to them because they are very powerful. We've never had corporates that are this powerful, and that's the challenge. That is actually the challenge. He has to try to maybe give them a bit of a soft landing because you can still use oil in other ways, even though you need to use it far more responsibly. And the reality is that unfortunately we humans don't seem to have evolved in our consciousness enough to be able to use the fruits of our spirit of witty invention responsibly enough. We're inventing incredible things, but these things have to be used very, very responsibly. So again, oil can still be used. So it's not as if you're just going to shut down the oil industries, but we're
So
going
you're
to.
not an advocate of leaving the oil in the soil, like leave it there, don't touch it because it's polluting.
No, yes, no, I am. I definitely am. But I'm also a realist, and I'm appreciating, the power of the people who have invested in taking the oil out of the soil. So, and it will be almost impossible to stop them. It would be great if you could just snap your fingers and say stop, but it's almost impossible to stop those guys. So what we could do is maybe just try to appeal to them that, look, please, if you do have to bring it out, don't burn it. How can you? And we need to really, point our fingers into their eyes, like the Greta girl said, and how dare you? How can you justify burning this limited resource, which has other very positive uses, especially when you know beyond any trace of doubt that burning this product emits deadly poison. And if you don't believe me and you are in that industry, there's a very simple test that you can carry out. Take your internal combustion engine vehicle into the garage, shut all the doors and the windows, bring your family, sit down in the garage and turn on the engine. And then tell me that you don't believe that your product emits deadly poison. As bad as the COVID has been, as tragic as it has been, and at the end of the day, we might even lose 1 million, maybe even 1.5 million people might die because of COVID. That poison takes out about 4 to 4.5 million people every year. Every year. It is toxic. And then, as if that's not bad enough, it's massively upsetting the atmospheric balances. And that's why we're having climate change. And that's why the Secretary General of the United Nations has said that the point of no return is no longer in the horizon, Ugochi. He said that the point of no return is hurtling towards us. And can I ask you a question? Let me ask you a question now. Is it possible that a fool, a nincompoop, an idiot, could ever become Secretary General of the United Nations?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Of course not. Just look at their CV, look at their track record. These are people of the highest caliber of intelligence, accomplished people. Somebody like me, would be lucky to be the secretary to the Secretary General, you know? But apart from being highly intelligent people, they have access to every amount of information. Look, this guy could pick up the phone if he wanted at 2 o'clock in the morning and just call one of his contacts in the World Meteorological Organization or whatever and say, oh, could you please tell me what the average rainfall was in Tokyo in 1964? And I can assure you, within minutes, you'd have the data just like that. So not only are they highly intelligent people, but they have access to
To
almost
research, they have
unlimited.
access to scientists, they have access to experts who have worked on all of this and understand the statistics.
Absolutely, they got access to it all. So now, and I'm sure that your listeners would agree that the Secretary General of the United Nations is not a fool. But now, the question is, if we agree that he is not a fool and we refuse to listen or believe his warnings, who then is the fool?
We have a troll who's watching. He's just been, posting comments. Bob John, and he's also said, I think he's a serious Trump supporter. He says January 6th is when the Electoral College votes. We're not really talking about the results of the election, Bob, so you don't mix things up. We're talking about climate change and vulnerable people. So I would also ask you: do you think the elections, climate change, played a role in the results we're seeing? Do you think people voted because for the impacts climate change or the environmental issues are having in the United States? There's been hurricanes, there's been storms, extreme events,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
been
definitely.
fires.
Definitely, they would have played a role. And to our to the gentleman that wrote in, I can understand perfectly why a lot of people would really really support Donald Trump. He's passed some very very salient laws. He's really pushed America in some very positive directions. There's no doubt about it. And I can understand why, emotively, a lot of people are emotionally attached to him. He's a very charismatic character. There's no doubt about it. But nobody's perfect, and some of us are less perfect than others. And again, the challenge here is it's the love of money. It's a strange one. Because money answers all things, but really the love of money is the root of all evil. And that's just the reality. An armed robber, he comes and maybe he shoots you and takes your money, because he loves that money so much. He feels that your life is less valuable than what the money can do for him. So it's
So to the question,
it's a challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge. It really is. It really is.
so to
So
the
I
question,
do
you think
sympathize.
that people really thought about climate change and environmental issues before they voted, and for whoever they voted for?
Yeah, yeah, but I think people put the love of money ahead of that. And let's face it, the whole Trump machinery was quite effective in generating jobs at large sacrifice. A lot of sacrifices have been made for those jobs to have been generated. And the biggest sacrifice of all is the fact that the climate change gravity was denied. And that's a very, very, very difficult one. Look, these two fingers and two fingers. That's four fingers. That's fundamental. That's basic. And the reality of climate change is as basic as 2 plus 2 equals 4. There's no denying it. It's fundamental science. You can go this way, that way, this way, but we are feeling the effects right now. And 20 years ago, we were told that, these are the sort of effects that we would be experiencing. So definitely voters, yes, thought about the climate change, but they also thought a lot about the money. Yeah, about the money. And they were actually coerced or persuaded that, well, if we go in the Biden direction, it's possible that we would actually be losing a lot of money in these major industries and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, that's what happened. That's actually what happened. But luckily, there were enough young people and aware people and women. It's the woman now who really had the emotional attachment. I don't think that's even the right word. It's the woman who had the sensitivity to understand that the direction that the incumbent Trump administration was taking America, whilst there could be a lot of benefits, it's not sustainable. It's not
So
sustainable.
4 more years, what would have happened to environmental regulations and the Paris agreements, which he already withdrew from?
I'm glad you asked that. 4 more years, because okay, this is the reality. Okay. We actually have about 10 years, maybe a little bit less, to massively address this awful pollution of the atmosphere by greenhouse gases, particularly CO2. And we had not been doing it. America was now developing herself to become a leader in this, as she has always led in so many other good causes, until the love of money drove this administration to trash that. As it is, as I mentioned earlier, the CO2 is still rising. Now, there's a certain limit. You see, it's not as if, okay, yeah, if the CO2 just goes, then okay, things will get a little bit hotter. No, 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 no. They have the reason why the Secretary General of the United Nations said at the point of no return, the point of no return, okay, is hurtling towards us, is because when the Earth starts to heat up just a little bit above her normal temperature, she now triggers off spontaneous release of other greenhouse gases. The forests, instead of absorbing the CO2, now become gross emitters of the CO2. The peatlands now start to emit CO2. The ice areas, instead of reflecting the heat from the white, because the white ice has melted, are absorbing more of the heat. So you get to a point where it snaps. It's like a rubber band. You pull it and then you go beyond your
Yeah,
point of elasticity. So the
absolutely.
world, not just America, this is no longer about just America. We're all on one tiny little planet. It's like a little blue marble. It's just a tiny planet. With our technology now, we can fly around it in just a few hours. With our technology now, here we are transmitting right across. It's a small planet, okay, and it has its limits. It has
Yeah.
its limits. And 4 more years, 4 more years without America leading the way, because China does not have the charisma, China does not have the popularity, it does not have the capacity to lead the world the way that America could and should. 4 more years of this climate change denial, 4 more years of encouraging release of greenhouse gases will bring us to the brink, that tipping point of
And we
no
hear the
return.
administration is already making quick changes. If in case they would have to hand over, they've already started making changes that would affect weaken a century-old protection of migratory birds and expanding Arctic drilling.
All these things are essential. It's essential. For too long, we've been too arrogant. We human beings, we've been so arrogant with our capabilities and our capacities and trying to divorce ourselves with this mechanistic attitude, divorce ourselves from nature. We are not apart from nature. We are very much a part of nature. And there are incredible things that the animals and the birds of nature can do. There are albatrosses that can fly almost all the way around the world. There are turtles right here in Lagos, in Nigeria. There are beaches where a turtle egg will hatch. And that turtle will now come and go into the ocean and swim all the way across to America. Okay? And when it gets mature, 3, 4 years later, this turtle will now swim back to the same beach that it was hatched and lay its own eggs with some incredible kind of perception of geographic locationing and so on, which the scientists still can't figure out. Not to mention the tiny, tiny spider that is maybe 1/3 of the size of your fingernail, unless you're wearing false fingernails. But if you're not, 1/3 of the size of your fingernail, this spider can emit a liquid silk that is stronger than steel. And then it'll now knit it into this incredible symmetry of its web. There are elephants that can actually perceive telegraphic perception. Yes, it's been proven. There was the story of the guy in South Africa, and he saved a whole bunch of elephants in this massive, massive ranch, and they stayed there for many years, and there was a huge ranch. And then the day he died, those elephants had been on a different side of the ranch. It was about 4 hours walk away. They hadn't been to his house for about, 6 months. The day he died, those elephants now came to his house, and they stayed there all day mourning. So, the creatures of nature have wonderful abilities. And, we in our arrogance have felt, oh, yeah, we can override it. We can do this. We can do. No, 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 no. It's not like that. And, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, um, COVID was predicted. And the scientists told us very clearly that you will unleash more zoonotic pandemics if you continue this onslaught on the biodiversity, on the wildlife, and so on. And it's almost like nature just decided, okay, that's enough action and reaction time. And nature just snapped her fingers like that and shut the world down. Shut the world
Some
down.
would argue that it wasn't nature, that it was man-made, it was lab-made.
Yeah,
Some
okay.
have argued that.
Yeah, yeah, and it was Bill Gates, yeah, and maybe Bill Gates was responsible for the Spanish flu as well, over 100 years ago. I know he looks quite old, but I'm not sure that he's that old. And then how about Ebola, and how about SARS, and how about the other pandemics? I mean, the jury is still a little bit out. There's a possibility, but the template is definitely a zoonotic template. If you examine it and if you understand the, chemical, biochemistry and so on, you will see that the template is definitely zoonotic. But we're going to, we're going to release more zoonotic pandemics if we continue this way. There's no doubt about it. Because these creatures, they have their own multiplicity of viruses. And these creatures hardly ever, they don't come into contact with each other until you grab them from one part of the world. You get a pangolin from West Africa, and then you get a monkey from India, and then you get a turtle from Australia, and you jam them all together with a civet cat from China, and you put them on top of each other, and they're peeing and pooing on top of each other and spreading the viruses. Definitely, you will
We have a bit of technical issues connecting to Mr. Desmond. Oh, okay. We lost him for a moment. How many people do you know who are sick? Oh, sorry. Welcome back. Continue.
But in fact, this is symbolic. No, this is actually very symbolic, because as we said earlier, nature snaps her fingers and shuts us down. And this is exactly what happened just now. we were we were shut down for a few seconds there. We need to nurture nature. We need to. She is our life support system. Within nature lies everything that we need for our survival. So this, awful arrogance that we've had, and in the pursuit of more and more profit, in the pursuit of things that we don't need to make us really, really happy, we actually don't need so much of the stuff that we feel that we need, because the system has
I agree with
indoctrinated
you.
us. Is
I agree with you. A lot of the things we manufacture and the excess, waste that come out of them, we really genuinely do not need, a lot of these things. We
I
just want to,
know, I
yeah.
know.
But
It's
that
very
will bring me
interesting.
to the next question about vulnerable communities in Africa, in the US, and what this election really means to them. Vulnerable communities, vulnerable to climate change, the impact of climate change, like erosion, desertification, flooding, and what's the impact of
Yes, there are
President
so.
Trump's actions and what Biden could be bringing to the table.
Yeah, yeah, there are so many vulnerable communities. In fact, at the end of the day, we're all vulnerable. But all the low-lying coastal communities are extremely vulnerable. From Lagos in Nigeria to New York in the United States. New York is very vulnerable to ocean rise and to big ocean surges. Remember, there was one big hurricane or typhoon that hit that side some years back, and the flooding that happened was tremendous. It was tremendous. But of course, with the technology, they're able to protect. Again, it's basic science. Okay, let's spell it out for those who are deniers. You see, water. You put heat to water, and guess what? The water starts to expand. Okay, and not only will the water expand, the water will start to evaporate more. So more heat, more evaporation, and more evaporation, more rain, more water falling from the evaporation, and also more heat, more energy. So you have bigger storms, bigger hurricanes, pouring more water in areas. Now, I don't know how I don't know if that was a simple enough explanation. How can you deny that sort of explanation? It's fundamental, elementary, basic science. More heat, more evaporation, more energy, more storms. So from Lagos to New York, they are vulnerable. Right now, of course, the African communities are feeling the impact more now because it hasn't become as exacerbated as it could easily become for places like New York and London to start feeling the effect. The desertification in Africa, especially in West Africa, is horrendous. The desert is just moving on, relentlessly because it's
Like
far
even the
hotter.
countries that have so much technology, to mitigate or to adapt, they're feeling the impact already.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the adaptation process can only, like New Orleans, when that hurricane hit New Orleans that time. I forgot the name of the hurricane. I forget the name, but it was, it had been predicted that this would be one of the symptoms. And with all the wonderful technology, they knew the hurricane was coming. They knew the waves with the hurricane was coming, and they knew where it would hit. They knew when it would hit. And, the great nation United States that took a man to the moon and everything. They couldn't slow down the hurricane by even half of a second. They couldn't divert the waves for even 1/4 of an inch with all the technology. Come on, come on. Nature is too powerful. Nature is far too powerful. You can't fight nature. You have to nurture her. You have to work with her. And she's unforgiving. You know, God will forgive you most of the time. Man will forgive you some of the time. Nature cannot forgive. Nature gives. Whatever you give her, she gives you back. If you plant a potato, you will harvest a potato. You will not harvest yam or you will not harvest corn. You will harvest what you sow into nature. And this is the lesson that we really, really, really must learn for our children's sake as well. And you know, that's what gives me a lot of optimism, Ugochi. You're a mother, aren't you? Yes, you are. And, you know, come on. We love our children. We love our children. And once we realize the gravity of what we could be preparing for the children, the horrendous, horrendous, catastrophic consequences of our actions against nature that will impact so terribly on our children. And it'll get worse decade after decade. It'll get worse because we would have pushed it into the point of no return. The puny technology will not be able to stop it. We cannot for one moment think that we can rely on the technology.
Absolutely.
Prevention is better than cure.
We have people joining us. Someone said hi, JC Royal. I'm joining from Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us from Abuja. Thank you. Oh, don't forget to like the video. Thank you, The Authentic Lean. So I would ask you, you've worked with communities, vulnerable communities, especially in Lagos. You know, you've worked with vulnerable communities in Lagos, you know, those that are experiencing sea level rise. I've visited, you know, some of the projects, some of the communities that you're working with, and we've seen villages, ancestral lands and graves, and, you know, washed into the Atlantic Ocean. You know, I've seen firsthand. I've gone to report, and in the space of 1 year, a building I saw was no longer there the next year. And these are stories of people who have been impacted by sea level rise and the impacts of climate change. Tell us about your work with vulnerable communities.
Yeah, absolutely. We tried very much to get some protection going for them. You know, we really, really lobbied government, and, you know, on my various birthdays, we do demonstrations and we get the community and we hold the placards up and so on and so forth. And, you know, eventually it had a little bit of impact, but not nearly enough. And we appreciated that in order to protect those vulnerable communities, quite a lot of funds would have to be spent in terms of shoreline protection and so on. And also in terms of preserving the mangrove swamps that are there. Again, you know, nature doing her thing. Once you have good mangrove swamps, it actually absorbs a lot of the ocean surges and helps to control the erosion on the beachfront and so on. But if you get rid of the mangroves by putting sand filling and you want to develop it and so on, then you don't have that protection anymore. So yeah, we've been at it for years and years and years. You know, we've really, really been at it. But what now is very encouraging is seeing the young people come into the forum, picking it up. And I'm so excited about that. The young people are realizing, hey, it's our future that is at stake, you know. And what on earth are you guys doing with our future? How dare you? How dare you? You know, as the young Greta said, how dare you mortgage our future just because you want to have some little extra profit? Are you really, really going to enjoy the profit that much, knowing that you have mortgaged our future and then pretending to yourself that, oh, yeah, well, you know, the technology will take care of it? No, the technology has its limitations. Even the vulnerable communities, there's a limit on how much they can be protected. and nature will push way beyond that limit if we push her there. Again, it's down to what we're giving into nature. It's down to what we're doing to nature. We can't continue massacring all the species. Do you know that humanity is going through one of the fastest, in fact, it's going through the fastest species extinction that has ever
Yeah.
been recorded. Species are being wiped out, species that we don't even know about. Wonderful, wonderful species, like some of those spiders. Like there's one frog called the gastric brooding frog. Anyway, this particular frog, she swallows her young once they hatch, and she keeps them in her stomach. But the stomach acids are controlled by a particular chemical, and that chemical could have done wonders. Anyway, the frog has gone extinct. Another one
Mhm.
wiped out.
Yeah.
Wiped out. On what justification? We
And
can't continue doing
we
this.
lost a lot of species in that fire in Australia. We also lost a lot,
Yeah,
with that oil pollution in Mauritius.
yeah, yeah, just wiping them out, left, right, and center. Not to mention what we've lost with the fires in the Amazon. And why are the fires going on there? Partly because they want to burn down parts of the forest so they can grow soya beans to boost
And of
the
course,
animal industry.
Our Niger Delta as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Money, money, money. But do you know that that Amazon forest is, apart from, wonderful oxygenator, apart from a fantastic carbon sequestration agent, that Amazon forest supplies massive amounts of rainwater, millions of tons of rain water every day emanate from the transvaporation processes of the Amazon. And that goes into many other regions of the world, including parts of America. That's what the forests do. It's very, very difficult to have any justification at all for destroying any forest at all, because the value, the service that the forest gives you far outweighs, if you just measure it in on economic levels, it far outweighs whatever little monetary gain you can get from that
Nutella.
forest. Yeah, because it's
It outweighs
perpetual. It
Nutella.
continues. Yeah, I tell you. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So we
Now
humans, we've
before we end this, oh, okay. Before we end this, I would like to talk about your favorite person, your favorite young person, lately is Greta Thunberg. And she made a comment when the president, Donald Trump, asked that the elections, they should stop counting the elections. And she said, she recycled his tweets to her. She said, it's so ridiculous. Donald Trump must work on his anger management problem and then go to a good old fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Donald, chill. That's it.
Yeah, I love that because she was actually responding to him. One of his tweets that said, "Oh, Greta has an anger management problem." In fact, I mean, let's face it, she has every reason, every excuse to be angry. If somebody is making decisions that could destroy your future, that could turn you into a refugee, even in your own advanced country, I think you got a little bit of excuse to be angry at that person. Hey, you want to destroy my very life support systems just so that you can boost your own standing, just so you can increase your own stature, just so you can make more money? Yeah, but no, she's an indication of where the hope lies. And the fact that she was able to mobilize so many people so quickly all over the world using the incredible technology, this weapon of warfare, which is changing the world. Through wonderful media organizations like this, you are part of the ammunition in the weapon of warfare that the Gretas of this world are going to use. And the beauty of this war is that it's going to be a peaceful war because of the numbers. Because of the numbers. The young people are going to be coming together. They're going to be rallying behind the Gretas of this world who have so much knowledge And that's the mistake that we're making. Even here in Nigeria, we just recently had an issue with the young people. They got the knowledge, man. All you got to do is, hey, Google, can you please tell me who is one of the best journalists that is in France right now? And then Google will now reply, her name is Ugochi. Ugochi is, come on, the knowledge is there. And the youth are communicating. It's unprecedented. It's an exciting, wonderful time. And we will get the best out of this massive, massive problem. Because for the first time, the whole of humanity have a common problem, no matter where you are,
Yeah.
no matter who you are, no matter what you are, we have the same problem. And that is the very life support systems of our incredible, miraculously made planet Earth are under deadly assault from our attitudes, from our greed, our avarice, our arrogance, particularly the arrogance of the men, my gender. We are the ones that have made the decisions over the centuries and centuries, marginalizing, pushing the woman out from decision making. It was only 100 years ago in England, just 100 years ago, when women were finally granted the vote. What arrogance! What nonsense! Ridiculous. And look at where it's got us, to the brink of a catastrophic breakdown of the life support systems. But the young people are rising up, and they're going to come to the rescue. We're all going to come together and make a change. And you know, at the end of the day, Ugochi, the main ammunition, using that weapon of warfare, the main ammunition, it's going to be summed up in just those letters: LOVE. All we need is love. Love for ourselves, love for each other, and love for the miracle of creation, and also love for the miraculous creator. And if you're an purely evolutionist, then love for that miraculous process of evolution that develops creation. Unless you are somebody who believes that there is a creator who was in the beginning before the beginning began.
I think
But it's all going to be down to love.
on this passionate note, I would love to thank you so much, Mr. Desmond Majikudumi, for joining me. You know, you're always passionate about this, even though you're elderly. You know, you're not in our generation. You wouldn't maybe not be here to feel the huge impact, actions or the actions of the generations have had will be having on the climate. But thank you so much for your passion. Thank you for your work, and thanks to everyone who's joined in. Thank you, Peter, Pablo. Thank you, Bob, our wonderful friend Bob, who has been, posting and posting. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, JC. Thank you, Mike, Takla. Thank you, everyone who joined in. We appreciate you. I am Gucci. Thank you so much, and bye bye.
Peace and love to you.
Okay, I don't know why I can't disconnect. Peter, I can't end this.